Hello, everybody, and welcome to Built by Redbeard. I'm going to be your producer, your host, and your cameraman, Nathan Lawson. This show is being brought to you by me, myself, and I. All these brands that you see, I have no affiliation with or no sponsorship with. It is clearly just for your information, for what I found and what I used. I'm not aiming to make show quality vehicles because knowing me, I'd probably be afraid to drive them if I did. I'm just trying to make a nice vehicle that I won't be afraid to drive, especially this one because I'm planning on using it as my daily driver instead of just driving it only when it's nice out because, as you can tell, it's not very much fun to drive it in the rain or the wintertime. It gets a little cold and wet. And not only that, but I'm trying to save money where I can. Behind me, I got the first project for y'all that I'm in the middle of. I'm getting pretty excited because I feel like I can see the light at the end of the tunnel with this one. So I can at least get it back on the road, hopefully this spring. I've had this torn apart for about a year and a half now to do the engine and transmission swap and kind of restoring it a little bit as I go. But it's a 1987 AM General 998. It was phased out of military service. Like many of you out there, you've seen these trucks as you was a kid and you just thought they were the coolest thing ever. At least that's what I felt like. And that's what kind of grew my desire to want one of these. And not being able to afford a civilian H1 Hummer, probably like many of you out there is in the same boat, I got pretty excited when I found out that the military was auctioning off their surplus Humvees. And not only that, but they're at prices that you could afford. Of course, there's no bells or whistles to a military Humvee, but I just seen it as a blank canvas so that way I could build my dream Humvee. So as I decided I was going to take the dive and build my dream Humvee, I started watching the Humvee auctions so that way I could get an idea of prices for what models would go for what and whether they were running or non-running, so that way I'd know what to look for when I got my money saved up for what I was going to have a chance to bid on. But as I kept looking into it, I found out that you had to do an end user agreement and that it could take 6 months or better that before the military would release the vehicle to you after you won it. And me, being impatient, I decided I was just going to try to buy a Humvee outright through classifieds. So as I started searching classifieds, I find one here or there, but not great luck. But I ended up stumbling across West Kentucky Surplus. I found out that they have a big inventory of surplus Humvees that they just sell outright. So I gave them a call and they said they'd stay open a little bit later for me if I came down on a Saturday afternoon. So the wife and I decided to leave out early one Saturday morning and make a nice little road trip down to Kentucky so that way we could check out their inventory. They had a big inventory of all kinds of different Humvees and models. I ended up finding this beauty in the non-running section to save as much money as I could. And it looked like somebody had been using it for a parts truck because all kinds of parts was missing. But they were a good group of guys and they threw in all the parts that it would take to get it roadworthy as long as the engine and transmission and drivetrain wasn't shot. Then I'd have a chance at having a running Humvee if I wanted to put some work into it. So I took them up on it and I brought it home and I immediately started going to work on it. To get the Humvee into the shop, I just used the old tire between the bumpers and I had my wife push me into the shop with my pickup truck. I put in a set of batteries, a set of cables, threw some fresh fuel in the tank, and I ended up finding a bad connection for the fuel shutoff solenoid. Fixed that, and I had a running Humvee. At this point, I felt like I had just won the lottery because I got a cheap priced Humvee, and now it's running and driving. So as I was saying earlier, it looked like the military was using this as a parts truck, so I had a little bit of work to do putting it all back together. As you can see, the B pillar was just thrown in there. It wasn't even bolted down, and you can kind of see that for my driver's seat, I just threw a 5-gallon bucket upside down. I took one of the seat cushions and set it on top of it so that way I could get the Humvee pushed into the shop. But upon inspection of the truck, I found some steering components that were shot, so they needed to be replaced before I could go use it as a daily driver and get it licensed. So I was able to put all the parts that they gave me back together on the truck to get it complete as much as it could. Of course, I was still missing a few things to make it completely roadworthy. I was missing some expensive parts, but being open top and I didn't foresee driving it in the winter, I decided to bypass all of the glow plug system and just plug it off. And since it was missing its generator, I just decided to buy a single wire 24 volt alternator. Then I just fabricated some brackets to hook it up. And one other major problem that was wrong with the truck was the starter was getting weak, and I really didn't want to put the money into a part that I wasn't going to be able to reuse for the Cummins swap. So I decided I was just going to send it, and I ended up getting about a year and a half of driving this around before I decided it was time to hang it up because I felt like it was just going to leave me stranded. But it was a blast getting to drive this around on all the nice days and using it as a daily driver as much as I could and getting to take the family on little back road adventures.
You're driving! This way, Daddy. This way.
So if this build interests you at all, or if you need ideas to do your own Humvee build, be sure to follow along as I take you through tearing it down and building it back up in the next videos.